Like a silver streak across the midnight sky, our stories move with a brilliance and speed you will never forget. Experience high-octane drama and the thrill of a narrative that never slows down for anything. Click subscribe now and catch the streak before it disappears into the dark.
At my mother-in-law's Easter table, in front of 11 members of her family, she picked up her wine glass, looked directly at me, and said, "I'd like to make a toast to Shep, who actually shows up for this business every single day, unlike some people at this table who are too tired." I was there in person. I was sitting right in front of her. She knew that was the point. I want to tell you what was in that room before I tell you what I did next, because the next part sounds too neat if you don't understand what led to it. It sounds like a story someone designed. It wasn't. It was just what happens when you spend 5 years quietly holding something together. And then, one Sunday in April, you simply stop. My name is Danny. I'm 31 years old. I've been married to my husband for 5 years. He is, by every honest measure I've ever applied to a person, a decent man. He coached Little League without being paid. He makes my coffee the way I like it without being reminded. When I got my diagnosis, he drove to the hospital in the middle of the night and didn't once say the wrong thing, which is harder than most people realize. His mother, Irene, is a different story. Irene built the family business, an HVAC service company in Knoxville, Tennessee, with her husband Gil starting in 1991. One truck, a rented warehouse, 2 people who worked until their hands gave out. By the time I married into the family, they had 16 employees, 8 vehicles, and a building they owned outright. That part I've always respected. Irene is a builder. She made something real out of nothing. The numbers side of that, something became my job about a year and a half into my marriage. I have a degree in accounting. I spent 4 years before I met Kavan doing small business tax prep and bookkeeping at a regional firm. I knew what I was looking at when Irene first showed me the financials, and what I was looking at was a beautiful set of bones with no system wrapped around them. Cash flow on a whiteboard, invoices in an accordion folder. Payroll managed through a service they'd been paying by check for years without knowing there was a portal. I offered to help. That's where the story begins, really. I offered because I knew how, and because helping felt like a way of becoming part of a family I was trying to earn my place in. Over the next 4 years, I moved everything to a cloud platform, set up automated payroll, got them current on quarterly filings that had been sitting untouched since 2019, negotiated a better rate with their insurance broker, and built a cash flow model that helped Irene secure a business credit line from their bank. That line funded 2 additional service vehicles. I did all of it from our kitchen table, my home office, a hospital waiting room, the back seat of a car. I did most of it while I was sick. That part matters, and I want to say it plainly so there's no wondering about it later. In the fall of my 3rd year of marriage, I began having pain I couldn't explain. Not dramatic pain. Not the kind that announces itself. The quiet, persistent kind. Like my skeleton was the wrong size for my body. Like my joints had been wrung out and put back slightly wrong. My hands hurt when I typed. My shoulders ached before I'd done anything to earn it. I was 29 years old. I went to my GP, then a rheumatologist, then a second rheumatologist. 8 months of appointments, blood panels, elimination of everything else. The diagnosis was fibromyalgia. Fibromyalgia looks like nothing from the outside. That is the first and most important thing to understand about it. I do not use a wheelchair. I don't use a cane. On a good day, I look like everyone else in a parking lot. On a bad day, I still look like everyone else in a parking lot, except I go home afterward and lie on the floor of my bedroom, because upright costs something, and on those days, the cost is high. Irene's position on the diagnosis was delivered once, clearly, and never revised. Over the phone to Kavan, with me in the next room, she said, There's nothing wrong with her that getting up and moving around wouldn't fix. She said it the way someone says something they expect to end a conversation. And for a long time, inside that family, it did. Kavan didn't push back. I understood why, and I won't pretend understanding made it hurt less. He is the older son, the peacekeeper, the one who held everything together by never being the thing that needed holding. The price of that identity is that you stop saying the hard things because the room always needs to stay manageable. His younger brother Shep is different. Shep is 34, has worked in the business since his early 20s, and has a gift for presence. He is in the building. He talks to the technicians. He shows up physically, which is the currency Irene measures love in, time and body in a room. What Shep does not do is touch the money. He has never logged into the payroll portal. He cannot tell you the business's EIN from memory. He does not know the name of the accounting firm the business uses, has never attended a quarterly review with our CPA Colleen, and has not once in 5 years asked me how any of the back-end systems work. That's not a moral judgment. Some people run the floor. Some people run the numbers. Every business needs both. The problem was that Irene told everyone Shep ran everything. At family dinners, at church, at a Chamber of Commerce luncheon I attended alongside her, she described Shep as the person keeping the company alive. He's the backbone, she'd say. Since Kavan went into engineering, Shep's the one holding it all together. I sat at those lunches and smiled and said nothing because I was still a guest in their story, and because I told myself it didn't matter who got the credit as long as the work got done. What I didn't understand yet was that she wasn't confused. She was constructing something. Easter this year fell on a Sunday in late April. I almost didn't go. My hands had been bad all week, the kind of bad where typing is slow and deliberate, and I make small errors I never made before. I'd spent 3 days finishing a quarterly sales tax return due the following Friday and pulling together documentation that Colleen needed for a credit line renewal. I was tired in the particular boneless way that fibromyalgia makes you tired. Not sleepy, but depleted, like someone had turned down the power to my entire body one notch at a time. I went because Kavan asked me to, and because some part of me still believed that if I kept showing up, the table would eventually acknowledge me. Gil opened the door and hugged me, warm and genuine. Gil has never been the problem. He is a quiet man who built something, and then stepped back and let his wife manage the family the way she manages everything. The dining room was full. Irene's sister Patsy and her husband, Shep and his wife Pia, 3 cousins and their partners, an aunt from Chattanooga I'd met twice. 11 people around a table meant for 10. I noticed the folder right away. Manila, thick, sitting on the sideboard behind Irene, half tucked under a breadbasket. She caught me looking and said, "Just some paperwork, we'll get to that after." She moved the basket to the table and the folder disappeared behind the serving bowl. Dinner was fine for the first hour. Turkey, scalloped potatoes, the green bean casserole Pia brings every year. I ate carefully because my jaw had been aching. I said the right things when asked. When Irene's sister asked how I was doing, I said, "Pretty good today," which was not a lie, but was not the full truth either, and that is the deal I've learned to make in rooms where the full truth takes up more space than it's given. It was Gil who opened the door without meaning to. He mentioned, in the easy way of a man making conversation, that the business's finances were in the best shape they'd ever been. The credit line came through without a single question, he said to the table. Not a hitch. Irene set down her wine glass. That's Shep, she said. He keeps everything tight. I looked at my plate. Gil said carefully, "Well, Danny put together the..." Shep runs the business, Gil. Her voice had the edge it gets when she is finished discussing something. Kavan shifted beside me. He didn't speak. I want to be honest about what happened in my body during what came next. Because the stillness people saw was real, but it wasn't empty. There was a long moment where she was building towards something, choosing her words with the particular care of someone who has been planning a speech for months and has finally found the right audience. Everything. I recognized the energy of it. I have sat across from auditors using that same energy, measured, patient, designed to land. Irene stood up. I want to say something, she said, since we're all here. She looked around the table, then at me. I am grateful for what this family does for this business. I mean that. But I think we've reached a point where we should be honest about what people actually contribute. She paused. And I'm tired of watching my son carry the weight while other people claim credit and call in sick half the week. She said fibromyalgia the way you say a word you've never believed, like repeating a lie back to the person who told it. I'm sure it's very difficult, she said. I'm sure it's very real. She sat back down, picked up her glass, but the rest of us go to work. Nobody moved. Shep looked at his plate. Pia refilled her own wine. Patsy made a sound that didn't resolve into a word. Kavin, beside me, said nothing. I have sat at conference tables delivering bad news to business owners about what they owe the IRS. I have a voice I use in those rooms, level, stripped of anything that could be mistaken for emotion, and I used it now. Okay, I said. Just that, just okay. I reached into my cardigan pocket and took out my phone, not dramatically, the same way you check a time or a message. I opened my email. I typed for about 45 seconds. I sent 3 emails. Then I made 2 changes in one app, set the phone face down on the tablecloth, and folded my hands on the table and waited. Irene watched me with something that looked like triumph, like she'd expected tears or argument or the specific kind of crumbling that would prove everything she'd just said. Who are you emailing? Pia asked, half smiling. I didn't answer. Dinner moved on. I finished what was on my plate. I thanked Gil for the turkey. I said goodbye to Patsy. Kavin walked me out to my car without quite meeting my eyes, and I drove home alone because I had driven myself. Here is what those 3 emails said. The first was to Colleen at the accounting firm. It said, effective today, I'm no longer serving as the business contact for Gil's Comfort Systems. Please direct all future communications, including the credit line documentation and the quarterly sales tax filing, due Friday, to Irene or Shep directly. I've CC'd Irene on this message. The second was to the payroll processing company. I am resigning as account administrator for the above business. Please contact the business owner, Irene, to arrange new administrative access. All current employee records and payment schedules remain intact in the system. The third was to a vendor waiting on a signed purchase order I'd been managing for 2 weeks. Please follow up directly with the business owner on this contract. I'm no longer the point of contact for this account. Then I went home and sat in the dark of my kitchen for a long time. Kavin called before I'd been home an hour. He left a voicemail that said, I don't know what you did, but my mother is upset. Can you call me? I didn't call him. I did cry, but not the way people imagine, not grief, not self-pity. The kind of tears that come after you've been holding something too tightly for too long and you finally open your hands. They don't feel like sadness, they feel like pressure leaving. The first crack came Tuesday. Colleen called my cell, the only number she had for anything related to the account, because in 16 months of working together, she had never received a call from Irene, never emailed Shep, never spoken to anyone in that family except me. Your mother-in-law called our office today, she said, with the careful voice of someone who knows they're in the middle of something, asking what a Schedule C was. I sat down. Shep called about an hour later, asking for the login to the tax portal. I asked him for the business EIN to verify the account. A pause. He didn't know it, said he'd have to get back to me. Another pause. The quarterly filing is due Friday, Danny. I thanked her. She said, "You built a very clean set of books over there. Whatever's happening, that part isn't your fault." That was the second crack. And after it, everything else came apart the way complex systems fail when the one person who understood them steps away. Not in a crash, but in a slow, escalating series of unanswered questions. Shep texted me Wednesday morning, just once. It said, "Hey, what's the login for the payroll thing? And what's our EIN? I can't find it anywhere." The man who had been publicly credited with running his family's business for 5 years did not know where the payroll portal was, did not know the business's federal tax identification number, didn't know it was printed on every W-2 the company had ever filed, didn't know where those were either. I read that text 4 times. Then I put the phone down and made tea and felt something in me go very quiet and very final. I didn't text him back. By Thursday, the vendor contract was at risk. The purchase order had a deadline, and without a signature from someone with authority, the terms would lapse. The vendor called Gil directly. Gil called Cavan. Cavan called me. This time, I answered. "My mother wants to know if you can just send Shep what he needs." "He needs to call Colleen," I said. "She has the filing. He needs to give her the EIN." "He can't find it. It's on the front page of last year's tax return. The returns are in the gray filing cabinet, second drawer, the one in the back office. I organized them by year in January." Silence. "Danny." "Cavan." A longer silence. "She went too far at dinner," he said. "I know she did." "Yes," I said. "But the business." "The business has everything it needs," I said. "Someone just has to actually learn what to do with it." I hung up. The filing happened on Friday. Barely. Colleen walked Irene through the process over the phone for 2 hours, billed at her standard hourly rate, and filed an extension rather than the actual return, because there wasn't time to pull everything together correctly. The extension came with a penalty estimate of around $400. I know this because Irene left me a voicemail that weekend. She didn't intend it as a confession. She intended it as an accusation. But words are strange things. They carry whatever truth is in the person saying them, regardless of the direction they were aimed. "You have put this family in a very difficult position," she said, her voice tight. "We had to pay Colleen for 2 hours to teach us things you should have handled. There's a penalty on the filing. And Shep has been up since 6 every morning trying to figure out systems you deliberately made complicated." She paused. Then, the sentence she probably regretted the second it left her. "He doesn't know how you set any of this up. Nobody does. You made sure of that." I saved that voicemail. Not because I wanted leverage. Because it was the first time in 5 years that Irene's own voice had confirmed out loud that I had built something. That it required knowledge, that without me, it didn't run. She said it as an accusation. She said it like it was something I'd done wrong, but she said it. The family meeting happened 10 days after Easter. I asked for it. I gave them the time and place, and I showed up 5 minutes early. Before the meeting, I'd asked Cavan what was in the Manzanilla folder. He went quiet in a particular way that told me he already knew, and eventually he told me. A new business operating agreement, drafted by a business attorney 8 months ago, that removed me as an authorized signatory and added Shep as co-owner. Irene had planned to present it at Easter dinner. She hadn't gotten to it, because the evening had gone differently than she'd built it to go. I set that document on the table at the start of the meeting. Not as a weapon. The way you set down any piece of evidence, so everyone can see it exists. "I know about this," I said. "I want you to know that I know." Irene didn't deny it. That surprised me. She said, "The business should stay in the family." "I'm in the family," I said. She didn't respond to that, and in her silence I finally heard the thing I'd been refusing to hear for years. She had never thought of me that way. Not really. I was a resource she'd acquired through her son's choices. A useful one for a while. I looked at Gil, who was looking at the table, at Kavan, who was looking at me, at Shep, who for the first time I could remember, looked like he didn't know what to do with his own hands. I played the voicemail. Irene's voice filled the room. He doesn't know how you set any of this up. Nobody does. No one spoke when it ended. Irene looked at the wall. Kavan closed his eyes. Shep's jaw worked on something he didn't say out loud. His wife Pia, who'd been told the same story as everyone else, that her husband was the backbone of this business, looked at him the way you look at a person when a version of them you believed in stops being the one in the room. "I'm not here to punish anyone," I said, when the silence had finished doing what silence does. "The business needs a real plan. It needs someone to actually learn these systems, or you need to hire a bookkeeper. Someone with my qualifications runs about $35,000 a year." I'd looked it up. I knew the number. What I'm not going to do is keep doing this work while you tell everyone Shep does it. Gil spoke then, quietly. That wasn't right, Irene. It was the most I'd ever heard him push back at her in front of anyone. She didn't answer. She picked up her coffee cup and held it in both hands and looked out the window, and I understood something about her in that moment I'd been too close to see before. She had built this company. She had been the indispensable one for 30 years. The person everything ran through, the one who knew where all the pieces were. And somewhere in the last 5 years, quietly and without permission, I had become something she'd never intended to allow. Someone the business needed more than it needed her. She didn't hate me because I was weak. She hated me because I wasn't. That wasn't an excuse. Nothing was an excuse for Easter, or for the word lazy spoken in front of 11 people over a holiday meal. But it explained the shape of the cruelty. And understanding the shape of something, I've learned, is not the same as forgiving it. They are two separate acts. I've chosen to do the first one. The second is still somewhere further down the road, and I'm not going to lie about that. The business hired a part-time bookkeeper. Colleen recommended her. She costs them $2,200 a month, which means, for the first time, they see what that labor actually costs when it shows up on an invoice instead of disappearing into someone who needed to feel like she belonged. Kavan and I are still having the long, hard conversations. I'm not going to tell you it resolved cleanly, because it hasn't. What I can say is that I am not asking him to choose between his mother and me. I'm asking him to stop treating truth and peace as the same thing. That turns out to be harder work than it sounds, and slower, and I don't know yet where it ends. What I know is what I did after. I started taking on my own clients in June, a bakery in Maryville, a small landscaping company, a yoga studio run by a woman who laughs at her own accounting mistakes and pays her invoices on time. I work from home, on my hours, during my good days, and through the hard ones. I stop when my body tells me to stop. I've built extra time into every deadline so that stopping is an option, not a failure. I've stopped apologizing for that. I have a window above my desk in the office I set up in the spare room. Some mornings before I open the laptop, I just sit there with both hands around my coffee cup, feeling the ache in my fingers, watching whatever's moving outside the glass. The light coming through it belongs to no one but me. The work on the other side of it has my name on it, my real name, not a daughter-in-law's silence. They said I was too sick to contribute. I stepped back and let them find out what that actually cost. They found out. I already knew.